Hello again, and welcome to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. I'm your host, certified sex therapist Laurie Watson, author of Wanting Sex Again, and blogger at Psychology Today and WebMD. And I have with me Dr. Adam Mathews, my co-host, who's a couples therapist, psychotherapist, and president of NCAMFT. Foreplay is dedicated to helping couples keep it hot. Each episode, we cover an aspect of sex that impacts your sex life and something that you can relate to. So if you find our discussions helpful, please give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. We would love it if you would tell a friend about us. You can find us also on the web at foreplayrst.com. And if you have a comment or a topic that you'd like us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. Please send them to us at info@foreplayrst.com. Thanks for listening. Now on to today's topic. Okay, today's episode on Foreplay is going to be about, am I normal? All the questions that people have about, am I normal? Is this normal sexually? Is my body normal?
We are so fascinated with that question. Why, we want to just be normal. And it's such a hard question to answer on a lot of things. It is a hard question,
right?
We are so fascinated. We want to make sure that nothing we do is outside of the normal boundaries, right?
Right.
And these artificial things that we've created that says whether we're normal or not.
Exactly. Because we don't want to be judged. We don't want to be judged as the super freak.
Especially sexually, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but the way that we have grown up and just experienced all kinds of negative messages about sex and about our sexuality, it just...
In our bodies.
And it just keeps that question at the forefront of our minds all the time, especially when we have this desire for something or a preference sexually, and we just end up all twisted about is this normal? Am I normal because I do this, because me and my partner do that? It just gets all...
Or I think about that, or I fantasize about this. All of that. I mean, people are really anxious about, I guess, the fear of judgment, and then that would lead to rejection, right?
Yeah.
If I reveal to my partner this idea or anything, they'll think I'm crazy or I'm a pervert or... all of those things.
Yeah, which all the negative labels, it's not that they're not going to think anything good about me, but they're going to reject me outright. And they're probably going to say, that's weird.
Yeah,
right?
that's the scary thing.
Yeah, because I hear that all the time. Isn't that so weird? It's so weird that I do that. Or clients come in and say something to the effect of, I'm going to scare you. I'm going to be your worst client ever. I just know it.
I'll bet you've never heard this before.
I bet you've never heard this before.
Yeah. Hard. Sometimes that happens still.
Occasionally.
But very rarely.
Very rarely, right?
If the walls of my office could talk, probably not.
Because wouldn't you say people are more normal than they think they are?
I would say that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's such a big fear, and one that I don't know that people necessarily have to be afraid of. But when people come in to you, Laurie, and they say, am I normal, with whatever question, is the answer ever no? Is the answer ever...
Not so far. I don't even think about it like that, right? Yeah. I mean, sexuality and sexual arousal patterns and bodies, there's this huge, wide variety of them, right? I mean, certain things most of us agree on as a society are not normal. Right? Things that are illegal.
Yes.
Fantasizing about children or
things that are abuses to other people.
Abuse. I mean, that is not normal, and we all agree on that. But within a regular person, not a criminal person, but a regular person's mind, there is a huge variety of things that turn them on, things that they like, things that excite them. I mean, the difficulty is, of course, discovering them yourself, sharing them with your partner, and figuring out what the two people together, want to have happen in bed.
Mm-hmm. Those things that happen, the things that we're afraid to talk about with our partner, a lot of times when we talk about them, our partner doesn't necessarily have to agree to do that or to participate, but it's more of we are talking about them and we're honoring that, and we're deciding together, like you were saying, what is going to be quote unquote normal for us in our sexual relationship.
Yeah, what's acceptable to us to do. And I think sometimes when people share fantasies or they share ideas, the other person can be on the defense immediately, like, well, is this going to be required? Am I going to have to do these things? But I think the first thing to remember, if your partner is sharing a sexual fantasy, First of all, just know that it is a gift of vulnerability. They are sharing something that is deep down inside, something about themselves. And so just, take a deep breath. You don't have to agree to anything, but just take a deep breath and honor the fact that they have decided to give you this huge gift of confidence by telling you something inside.
Yeah, and then that's really honoring. And then there's nothing that you can't talk about. I think that's one of the things that when we start looking at things through the lens of normal or not normal, a lot of times those things become deal breakers for us, or they become much scarier for us than if we accepted the position that you're talking about, as far as there's a wide variety of things and that it's a gift of vulnerability that your partner is sharing with you, right?
Accepting your partner and their ideas and their fantasies and their fears and everything about their sexual self does not mean agreement to do anything with them. It means just sort of being wondering and feeling curious about the way they are put together.
Yeah. And this idea of normal, too, is especially a sexually normal, right? There is a catch-22 for us in that. If there's a fear that I have that I'm not sexually normal, right? If I disclose that and the answer to that is yes, I am sexually normal, then all of a sudden it risks being irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
It risks being not sexy. All right.
Because I want to be better than normal.
That's right. But if it isn't normal, then all of a sudden I'm outside of the norm and I'm outside of what's acceptable sexually, and it's not going to be fulfilled. I'm going to be unfulfilled sexually.
Yeah.
So like even putting it in these terms, like there's a subtle trap there that I think we have to be aware of and get out of is that because otherwise we're either completely boring sexually or we are perverts.
Totally
right?
vanilla or totally perverts.
Yeah, like and there's no room for anything in between, which is dangerous for sure.
I would say, 10% of the people who come in on it, maybe not that, I don't know, but some percentage of the people who come in and make appointments, it's really to ask one question. Am I normal? Or I've never told anybody this. Yeah. And they're fearful. They're fearful about that judgment or that they're actually the super freak and they'll be rejected.
Yeah. And that becomes all consuming, right? I mean, it becomes everything about their sex life when ultimately there's the possibility that there is much more about their sex life as well. And this is only one part of it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not everything.
So I thought I'd talk about some of the things that people do bring up, like, am I normal? And just to reassure people out there that, yeah, that's normal. I mean, one thing, to start with the body, and this is a big one, because porn has standardized people, genitalia and breast size and shape. And, there is a lot, unfortunately, of erotic standardization. So people don't know, am I normal? Women tell me all the time, I don't like my labia. And this is really an intimate confession, that they don't like their genitals. And I'm like, why do you not like that? And one is bigger than the other, or one hangs down, or, all these things that really, to me, every woman is different. I mean, every snowflake different, every vulva different. What you see on porn has been standardized, sometimes surgically. I mean, there is the standardization that somehow or another labia has to be small, and it's crazy, but women pick up on this as well. And I don't hear as many men talk about it. Like, I don't like my wife's genitals, but I do hear women say, I don't like him to go down on me. I don't like him to look at me because I don't think I look right. Yeah. And it's all about this issue of the labia, or now that I'm getting older, I'm droopy, or all of this really self-criticism. And I would tell you, first of all, that you are normal, that different is normal, and that frequently a partner looking at you thinks it's totally exciting. You got to get over it, right? Yeah,
and I think, women aren't the only ones that think about that. And I think so. When you talk about every snowflake is different, every vulva is different, every penis is different.
Every penis is different.
Balls are different, like the testicles are different. Like we get these things in our head that it's supposed to look a certain way, or it's less than somehow. I mean, it ties into like we should be taller, we should be firmer here, we should be bigger in this area, like all these things that, like you talked about, that get standardized in media. I don't think it just happens in porn. I mean, porn, it does, obviously, I think porn is one of the bigger places that it happens, but it happens in all kinds of media, television, movies. Everything becomes these standard performances or these standard sizes.
Sure, and just for the record, guys, I mean, the porn pictures out there, that is not normal. That is not even close to normal. And the other thing I hear about penises is men ask, my penis curves. Is that normal? And yes, to the right, to the left, a little bit up, a little bit down, all of that is normal. I mean, many men have a curve in their penis. It isn't straight up and down, and that's really quite normal. And it's only problematic if it happens suddenly, like if there's a bend that suddenly happens. That's a plaque condition that you need to go to see a urologist quickly about. That hasn't been there. That hasn't been there previously. But it's totally normal to have a bend, a bit of a curve. Not a bend, a curve.
I'm sure there's tons of more questions, and when we come back, you're going to give us some more "Am I normal in this area?" questions that will kind of dispel all these myths and rumors, right?
Right. Okay, so it's Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. We're talking about "Am I normal?" and you are with your sex therapist, Laurie Watson, and your couples therapist, Dr. Adam Mathews. We'll be back.
Wanting Sex Again: How to Rediscover Desire and Heal a Sexless Marriage by certified sex therapist Laurie Watson.
Each chapter is designed to fix one of the problems that cause low libido, from early marriage through the childbearing years, even all the way through menopause. I've also had men read it and tell me that for them it was the most hopeful thing they read about resolving sexual problems.
Look for Wanting Sex Again on Amazon.com. You can also talk to Laurie Watson for therapy in person or via Skype.
I offer couples counseling and sex therapy, and I think about both aspects of the relationship, emotional intimacy and sexual technique, and that combination together helps marriages be happy.
Weekend couples intensives are also offered. Improve your sex and improve your relationship with Awakening Center for Couples and Intimacy. Find out more at awakenloveandsex.com. Awaken what's possible.
It is one of my great joys in life to be able to really help individuals and couples find strength in their relationships and really find hope again.
Licensed marriage and family therapist Dr. Adam Mathews from Mathews Counseling.
I work with a wide variety of issues, including depression and anxiety, marital issues, issues with adolescence. I believe that therapy should be designed around you, that it should be personalized to who you are and to your unique situation.
Therapy is available in office, online, and by phone.
I want therapy to be comfortable for everyone. At our office, you'll find that we sit around a fireplace in deep, comfortable chairs, look at the problem differently, and offer practical solutions for you to take home and utilize outside of the therapy room.
Schedule today and rediscover hope.
You can find me on the web at mathewscounseling.net, Mathews with one T. You can contact us through email or phone and find a lot of resources on our website, mathewscounseling.net.
Okay, you're back. Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. Am I normal? Is the question of the day. And we're talking about the questions we get from people about their bodies, their sexual ideas, their sexual experiences. We've talked about the body questions, and I want to talk about a sexual experience that is so common as dirt, and people feel really anxious about that. And that is when a heterosexual person says, I had same-sex experiences, sexual experiences, with a child friend of mine of the same sex.
Yeah.
And many children have their first sexual experiences just sex play, playing doctor, looking at each other, sometimes touching each other with the same-sex child.
Yeah, you're not even talking about
I am not talking about abuse.
About somebody that's way older, a child that's way older. You're talking more about peer-to-peer.
Right. Just exploration. I am not talking about exploitation, which is oftentimes involves coercion or an age difference. And I'm not saying that is good at all. That is bad. But oftentimes kids, they discover each other's bodies. They, and we tell them because we want to set good boundaries when we find our children doing this. It's time to put your clothes on. Everybody needs to keep their private parts covered.
That's right.
We set good boundaries for them, but many people have had this experience. And what they wonder is, does this mean I'm homosexual? And it doesn't mean that you have a sexual orientation that is homosexual because you've had those experiences.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that. Our gender orientation is very complex, and it's made up of many things. And those early experiences might have been sexual, that's true, but it might have just been curiosity and play. And I think, people, they are normal. If they've had that, that's a normal childhood experience to have had some sex play with a child because they are playing with children of the same sex.
Yeah. And I think I like what you said, that I think people don't realize just how common it is, but that is a question that comes up that sticks with them in their mind when they start to think about it. And it starts to affect their current sex life because they start to think about, well, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Why did that happen? What does it mean? Like all those what if and why questions start to float around, and recognizing that it is a normal experience that multiple people have had.
Sure. And it really doesn't mean anything about your eventual orientation.
Right.
When it's non-coerced, when it's non-exploitive, when it's just child's play, it is something that people incorporate into their learning experience about the body, about their own body. It's normal. And so don't put so much worry about that.
Yeah. Don't give it so much weight.
Yeah, it's fine. And I think it is. I have heard so many people say, I've never told anybody this.
Yeah.
Like they're ashamed of it. And, these are experiences that most people have had. Okay, another one is their fantasies, right?
Are my sexual fantasies normal?
Are my sexual fantasies normal?
Yeah.
And people, I got to say, sexual fantasies are derived from another complex stew. Oftentimes our childhood experiences and things that once puberty hits gets eroticized, crazy feelings and stuff like some people say, I find it sexy to be spanked. And we're not going to go way into this, guys, but, oftentimes spanking is really an intense experience for a child, and something that, for the record, I'm against.
Yeah.
But, many children are spanked on their buttocks, which is, an erogenous zone.
Mm-hmm.
And frequently, once puberty hits, intensity gets eroticized. And so the way they kind of manage that experience, and I'm not saying that they're spanked into their teen years, but the way they manage the memory and the fear and the experience of it is often to find sexual pleasure in it. So is it normal? I think it's a way of managing something, right? It's a way of managing an experience.
And that happens with a lot of sexual fantasies, though. The
does.
Process that you're describing is one where what happens to us in our sexually formative years, mainly in puberty, or the things that we associate when we're in those years, within those years, become some of the things that we become sexually fixated on.
Yeah.
Right? And so, some of them are maybe more unhealthy than others necessarily, depending on where that leads us and what that causes us to do.
Yes.
But as far as the fantasies themselves and how they get lived out with our partners and the conversation we get to have with our partners, that part is completely normal.
It is completely more normal. And I think, some are more workable, right? Some are more about the person-to-person relationship versus maybe an object, right? Some people get fixated on a shoe, and they're not necessarily fixated on the leg associated with the shoe. Right. They're only looking at the shoe, and that's a harder thing in a partner sex. And, we can go into fetishes and things like that at another date. But is it normal to have fantasies that are outside of just my one partner, right? My chosen spouse, let's say, or the person I'm married to, is it normal to have fantasies about other people or other things? I think it's human. Mm-hmm. I mean, can you really stop those ideas? I think it's what you do with them. Do you use ideas, sexual things that come into your head, or memories, or fantasy, and do you let it, turn you on, and then use that, what I say is like libidinal energy, putting it back into your primary relationship? That's what keeps it hot for couples, right?
Yeah. When
they go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, when it gets turned, when it becomes about separation and separation from your partner, that's where I think it gets dangerous, because it gets threatening to the relationship.
Right. So we would say fantasizing about the yard boy next door, the hot yard boy. I mean, you see him, he's hot. I mean, taking that energy and bringing it back in and being alive with it, and taking the sexual energy that is generated from that and driving it back into your partnership is good and healthy, and what you can do with it. I think when you start to have sort of a fantasy about one particular person, and you start to make plans for meeting that particular person, obviously that's not going to make your coupleship hot, right? That's going to be hot outside of it. So it's not that it's not normal. It's that what you're doing with it necessarily doesn't feed and aid your primary sexual relationship.
We might say that it's the same as emotions, right? There's no bad emotions, because emotions just come up, right? It's what you do with them and how you talk about them, and whether you lash out or withdraw or separate because of them. And so the same could be true for sexual fantasies as well, is that when you have them, being able to communicate them and make that turn back towards your partner, and it being more about what you do with that versus actually having it.
Yeah. I would also say the am I normal questions might be, I have a better orgasm with masturbation than I do with my partner. Is that normal? Or is it normal that I masturbate still? Is it normal? I think about sex and want sex 6 times a day. I mean, is this normal? I think that the issue is, first of all, a lot of people have orgasms that are better with masturbation because it's a perfect biofeedback loop.
Yeah.
So that, that makes
yourself.
sense to me.
You know
your body.
Well. Yeah.
You know how to turn yourself on. No kidding, of course. And I think most people masturbate, yes, throughout their whole committed relationship or married life. In some way they just want an orgasm by themselves, and it is not a diss to the relationship. It's not a criticism in general, unless it becomes something that they're doing right, that is, they're preferring it to the couple relationship. Yeah. And it's still normal, but it's not necessarily feeding your hot, committed relationship sexually.
I think that's a really good distinction, because there's a difference between it being normal and whether it's beneficial to your relationship.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very good marker for what we're talking about, is that there can be stuff that's normal that happens that may not be beneficial to your partnership, and it may not be beneficial to furthering your sexual relationship with your partner either, right? There may be some fantasies that you have, some sexual fantasies that your partner is uncomfortable with, and to continue to force them or to say this has to happen,
to nag at them.
Yeah, like that is going to be really damaging to your relationship, but that doesn't fall within the same category as normalcy, right?
Yeah, and so I think in terms of dealing with the differences, right, of couples' fantasies and ideas and what they want. I mean, there's some guidelines, and I think one is, does it add to us, like you just said? Does it add to us as a couple? First, obviously, consent is absolutely, just absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Anything you're going to try, you have to have consent of the other person. And the question is, does it hurt us emotionally or physically or spiritually? Those, I think, are really important things to think about before you make decisions about what's going to be included in the coupleship. And, go with your gut instinct. If you have a funny feeling, this needs to be talked out.
Yeah.
It needs to be sorted out with your partner.
I think that's good. So, Laurie, what are our takeaways for today? What did we learn? What are we taking away?
Okay, so basically, everybody has anxiety about whether or not they're normal. And by and large, there's a wide variety of physical bodies, genitalia, huge variety, and all of it is normal. Most of it, 100% of it as long as you're functioning okay, I mean, then yeah, it's normal. And I think in terms of fantasy, to us, there's such this growing up years that contribute to the wide variety of arousal patterns and fantasies inside. It's probably normal, but then how and if you include it in the coupleship is part of the discussion and negotiation with your partner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. That was fun.
You're listening to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with your sex therapist, Laurie Watson, and couples therapist, Dr. Adam Mathews. Thanks for listening. Hey, help us stay on top here at Foreplay. We'd love it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. And please take 1 sec and rate and review us. Thanks so much.